Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Dynamics 365 Tech Talk. Today's topic is Planning for License Transition with the Dynamics 365 License Transition Guide. My name is Laura, and I'll be your moderator today. We are broadcasting this session through Teams live events, and the audio can be heard through your device speakers. This session is being recorded on behalf of the Microsoft Corporation. When you join this event, your name, email address, and/or phone number may be viewable by other session participants in the attendee list. By joining, you're agreeing to this experience. The recording will be available on the TechTalk's Community Dynamics page within 5 business days. If you have questions for the presenters or need support, please use the Q&A panel located on the right side of your screen. Our presenters will be responding to your questions throughout the session. Thank you for your patience during these announcements. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Reed Wolfe. Reed, over to you.
Thank you, and hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. My name is Reed Wolfe, and I'm a Principal Solution Architect with the Dynamics 365 Fast Track team. With me today, I have my colleagues Kimberly, Fain, and Katie Haveles, who will be co-presenting and helping answer questions in the Q&A area. The purpose of this session is to walk you through the latest version of our Dynamics 365 License Transition Guide. Transitioning from old licensing to new licensing can be a stressful topic, so we wanted to provide the necessary information to help guide you through the process of what to consider in terms of the different scenarios and options that you have, along with step-by-step guidance that will help you limit potential impacts and have a successful and smooth transition to your new licensing. We published this guide earlier this year, and we'll continue to keep it updated with the latest guidance as licensing and platform changes come into play. All right, so for our agenda, we'll start off by reviewing the license subscription lifecycle process, including the various stages and what happens during each of those stages. We'll discuss service plans and service plan conflicts, how to account for these conflicts during the license transition, and how to help prevent potential user impact. We'll review how to prepare for the license transition through identifying the current license management processes and making sure that you're considering the right questions to determine the license mapping requirements, providing validation that you have the necessary quantities of licenses. And then we'll discuss the different transition process flow scenarios that could apply depending on how the user licenses are being managed in their current state, and providing recommended steps to help support that transition. We'll look at the options for reassigning the licenses, discussing group-based versus direct user assignment, and then at the end, we'll quickly review some of the other resources on this topic that are available to you. So with that, I'll hand it off to Kimberly Fain, who's going to take us through the details on the licensing subscription lifecycle, service plans, and how to get started with transition planning. Kim?
Thank you, Reed. So as Reed stated, we're going to start talking about the subscription lifecycle and the stages through the subscription, as well as the service plans. So what happens when your subscription expires? There are a series of stages that occur once your subscription reaches its expiration date. The first stage is expired, where your subscription goes into a grace period. It starts immediately after your subscription end date. There's no user access impact during this stage, and it allows the admins and licensing team time to acquire the necessary licensing. In the next stage, the subscription becomes disabled. While users can no longer access the data, admins have access to both the data and the admin center, although they can no longer assign licenses. This is the last step where the subscription is still recoverable. Once it reaches the last stage, deleted deprovision, the subscription is no longer recoverable. Some additional notes. If you turn off recurring billing, it will go through the normal expiration stages, but starting on the anniversary of the annual subscription, not when it's turned off. Also, if you cancel your monthly subscription, it becomes disabled immediately and users will lose access. On our next slide here, we have a breakdown of the different accessibility to data and user experience across the different stages. For example, The data is accessible to everyone in the active and expired stages. Only admins have access in the disabled stage, and the data is deleted in the deleted and deprovision stage. If we take a look at the licensing options, the global or billing admin can still reactivate the subscription, but only during the expired and disabled stages. For non-volume licensed customers, the subscriptions will be in the expiration status for 30 days and disabled status for 90 days. And for volume licensing customers, it's the opposite. They'll be in expired for 90 days and disabled for 30 days. So both volume and non-volume customers have around 120 days to recover it before it is deprovisioned. So now we're going to take a look at service plans. In order to take full advantage of licensing entitlements, each license provides limited functionality to other Microsoft 365 applications through service plans. These sub-services are available when you assign the license to the user. For example, if you assign the Dynamics 365 Customer Service Enterprise license, you may see service options similar to the right screenshot. In this case, you can give services like Power Apps, Power Automate, and SharePoint use rights to the users. But it is within the context of the Dynamics environment. Please reference the licensing guide for the use rights and entitlements for these services, as they are generally specific to the Dynamics or primary license use cases. When you attempt to assign a license to a user, a validation takes place to determine if the services that you selected to enable conflict with the services already assigned to that user via another license. Some products contain service plans that cannot be assigned to the same user at the same time. When this happens, a conflict will occur. For example, on the right, the user has been assigned the Dynamics 365 Customer Engagement P1 license and the Dynamics 365 for Customer Service license. These licenses will cause a conflict. The conflict is intentional and meant to prevent users from assigning redundant licensing. The bottom left screenshot shows how a conflict might appear in the Microsoft 365 portal. On the right here is how the error might appear in the Azure AD portal. So let's talk a little bit about transition planning, how you can help customers plan for transitioning their licenses. The first step you want to take is to review the current license management process that's in place today. And you want to take into consideration the following: how you're currently assigning licenses, whether that is direct user assignment in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center or through PowerShell, or whether it's group-based licensing assignment, or you may have a combination of both. The second consideration here is, are your subscription licenses changing? Meaning, are you moving to a new license type? An example might be moving from the customer engagement license to a mix of Dynamics 365 sales and Dynamics 365 service licenses. Knowing the quantities and types of licenses that you're transitioning to is critical in the mapping exercise. The next step is to map the license transition. If the mapping is one-to-one, this means that users are transitioning from an old license like customer engagement to a new license like customer service, and there's a one-to-one mapping between the old and new license. Or you may have a situation where the old license may map to multiple new licenses, with some users getting customer service and some getting sales enterprise attached licenses as an example. It's also important to make sure that there are sufficient target licenses ahead of time in case additional licenses need to be purchased, as the procurement process can take some time. Here we provided a couple of scenarios that you can use to help understand how the mapping process works. In this example, we are mapping 200 customer engagement licenses and 275 Dynamics 365 team member old licenses to customer service, sales enterprise, and Dynamics 365 team members new license. We're going to start by mapping 150 of those to customer 50 of those customer engagement licenses to customer service and 50 of those to sales enterprise. Next, we map the Dynamics 365 team members old license and assign 50 of those to customer service, 25 to sales enterprise, and 200 to the Dynamics 365 team member license. At this point, we can see that we originally started with 475 licenses, but now we have 425 with a 50 license deficit. These licenses will need to be procured in order to transition all of the users. In our second example, this involves transitioning from the customer engagement plan to a mix of customer service enterprise base license and the sales enterprise attached license. This is a bit more straightforward since all users in this case will be receiving the same new licenses, which will replace the customer engagement license. Okay, I'm going to transition back over to Reed to talk about transition process flows. Reed, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Kim. Okay, so next we'll review the process flows that will help map out the appropriate steps for the transition. And there's two common approaches for assigning your licenses. The first one is direct user license assignment, where you assign the license directly to the user through Azure Active Directory, the Microsoft 365 admin portal, or using PowerShell or a third-party tool. Direct user assignment can be more challenging for customers who have a large number of licenses that need to be managed across their organization, and it's really meant for simpler license assignment scenarios. The second one here is group-based license assignment, and this is where you can assign the license to an Azure Active Directory group and then assign users as members of that group so that they inherit the license assignment. If group-based licensing assignment isn't already being used and there's consideration for moving to group-based, the license reassignment process is a really good time to do that since you're already having to take the transition steps. And it will also help prevent from having to duplicate that effort at a future date. You can also consider transitioning using a mixed approach, and this is where it would involve transitioning using a combination of group-based license assignment and some direct user license assignment, depending on your needs and your scenarios. Also, you'd want to test this transition with a smaller subset of users first, and that'll help ensure that the steps are validated and that things go smoothly when you do this live in production. You also want to make sure that you're scheduling the transition during non-peak usage times or maintenance windows if possible, which will help lessen risk of any potential impacts there. All right, so getting into the transition process flows, this flow is for those scenarios where you're currently assigning licenses using the direct user assignment option. And the first decision point at the top here is whether you want to continue using direct user license assignment. If that is your preference, then the action needed is fairly straightforward. You need to first revoke the old licenses from the user accounts and then assign the new licenses. And there are a few options you can consider to perform these actions. If there's a large number of users that you're transitioning, we'd recommend that you consider using the PowerShell approach, as it'll help streamline that process. But you also have the options of leveraging the Azure portal and Microsoft 365 portal for the direct assignment as well. If you'd like to move to the group-based approach, you'd go down to the second row here in the decision tree, where you'd start by first testing to see if there are any service plan conflicts that exist when assigning both your current licenses and your new license. If there aren't any service plan conflicts in your testing, then you'd move to the step on the right, where you'd create a new group or set of groups for the licenses that you're transitioning to, and then add the appropriate users to the group. You'd then assign the new license or licenses to the group using the Azure portal or PowerShell commands. Since you don't have any service plan conflicts, you can choose to leave the old licensing assigned until it expires and is automatically removed from the tenant, or you can go through the process of removing it. If you did experience service plan conflicts in your testing, then you'd want to come down here to the third row in the decision tree. And here you start by creating one or more groups for the new licensing, depending on if you're transitioning to a single or multiple new licenses. And then you'd add the appropriate users to the groups. If there's sensitivity to user downtime or potential user disablement, you'd move to the right, the next step here, where you create groups for the old licensing, and each legacy license would then require its own group. You'd assign the legacy licenses to those groups, and then add the users who currently have those licenses directly assigned to them. And then the next step, you'd want to validate that the users now have both the group and directly assigned licenses against their accounts. In the Azure portal, there's a reprocess option to force the group license assignment to kick off immediately. Otherwise, it will initiate shortly after you assign the license and the users to that group. And then moving down to the fourth row here, if there isn't user downtime sensitivity, you would skip down to this step from that decision in the third row. And this is where you'll want to remove the old licenses that are directly assigned to the users. If there's a large number of users, we'd recommend using PowerShell for this step. And we've included a script in this guide that you can use for that purpose, which we'll actually demo here shortly. And then once the direct user assigned licenses have been removed, you'd want to move to the next step here. And this is to assign the licenses to the new groups. If you see any service plan conflict errors during this step, those can be safely ignored. You want to allow enough time for the new license assignment to sync to all the users in that group. So you'll see a message in the Azure portal stating that license changes have been applied to all users, and that'll let you know that it's completed the assignment of the new licensing to the users in that group. All right, and then next step here, you want to remove the old licensing from the old group. And since service plan conflicts exist in this scenario, you must perform this step in order to remove the old license from the old group so that the new licenses can then get assigned to the users. And the final step is to resync the licensing on the old group using the reprocess option in the Azure portal. And this will kick off the license removal for the users in that group. It can take some time to process again if there's a large number of group members. And you can review the status of the license removal on the old groups by accessing the license area of the group. Again, excuse me, you should see a status letting you know that the license changes have been applied to all users once that's completed. It could take a little time for this to show up. So if you don't see it after some time, you can spot check some of the users in the group by going into the user account, going into the licenses area for that user, and then reviewing the assignment path. That will show only the inherited group for the new license once the removal of the old license has been processed. All right, so now we'll go through a quick demo of the highlighted steps that you'd take to transition to the new licenses from the direct user assignment to group-based assignment licensing. And in this case, we don't have any service plan conflicts that exist when assigning the old and new licensing at the same time. So we'll show you what that looks like. So you first want to test for service plan conflicts by opening up one of your user accounts and going to the licenses area here. And then you can see we've got this customer engagement plan license already assigned. That's our old license that we're transitioning from. We're going to transition to the customer service license in this case. Click Save Changes. And you can see they're successfully saved and we don't experience a service plan conflict in this scenario. Next, we're going to create a new licensing group for the new license. We've called it customer service users in this case. We have 7 members already selected for this group. So we'll go ahead and click on Create here to create that group. And once that's created, we're going to open up the group, and we'll go into the licenses area, click on assignments, and then we'll select the Dynamics 365 customer service license from the list and save those changes so that this license is now assigned to that new group. All right, and then we can do a quick validation that both licenses are now assigned to the users by opening up one of the group members for that licensing group, going into the licenses area, and you can see we have both the old customer engagement license and the new customer service license active for that user. All right, so for this next demo, we'll walk through the highlighted steps that you take to transition the new licenses from direct user assignment to group-based assigned licensing. And in this case, service plan conflicts do exist when assigning the old and new licensing at the same time. So there will be some additional steps taken to help account for that. All right, so same thing. We're going to start off by doing a quick validation of whether or not that service plan conflict exists. We'll open one of the user accounts, click on licenses, and you can see that we have the customer engagement old license assigned already. So we're going to assign the new customer service license, save those changes. And you can see we do get a service plan conflict error here, so they can't both be assigned at the same time. We're going to follow the steps in the path for the decision tree on how to account for that by first creating a new group. Again, we have a customer service group, and we've got 5 members selected to be a part of this group. And we'll click create to create this new licensing group for the customer service license. And then we're going to create an old group for the current customer engagement license. We'll call this D365 customer engagement users. Go ahead and add some members to this group. So these are all the users that have it currently, the customer engagement license is currently directly assigned to them. I'm going to also add them to group-based assignment for this first. So that has been saved, and now we're going to go ahead and open up that group. Go to the licenses area, go to assignments, and we're going to add the customer engagement license to that group. So that's saved, and now those users should be getting updated with that license. And because we have the service plan conflicts, we're just going to go in here and quickly validate in the licenses area for one of the users. We do see both direct and inherited from the group being assigned to the user. Step number 5 here, we're going to remove the old direct user assigned license using this PowerShell script. And you can see I'm already connected to the graph service. I've installed the module. So the next step here is going to be step 2. And this is where we're actually going to get a list of the licenses for the tenant by running this command. And we want to get the SKU part number, which is the column on the right here. We're going to identify the correct SKU part number for the old license, in this case, the customer engagement license, and copy that from here so that we can plug it into the next command. So in this case, it's our D365 Enterprise Plan 1 part number. So we're going to take that, copy it, and paste it, and we'll run this next command to define that SKU variable for the next commands. And we'll just do a quick validation that that's been defined correctly. And yep, we can see here that it has been set. So we'll go to the next command, which is going to be exporting any users that have that customer engagement license. It's going to export them into this path, the C scripts licensed users path. And this is just a CSV file with the users in it. Go ahead and run that. And then once that's executed, you can open up that CSV file and validate the correct users are showing up. If you want to remove users in here that are sensitive to the transition, like service accounts or C-level resources, you can do that here as well. And then you can save and close that file. And step 6, we're actually going to run this to remove those direct assigned customer engagement licenses using the users in that CSV file. So it's going to actually process through that list. And you can see now that those users have had that license removed. The last step is just to validate that. So it's going to review whether or not the list that we initially created, any of those users still have that customer engagement license applied. All right, and then we'll do a refresh on this user account. And you can see we now only have the inherited group assignment applied for this user. The direct is no longer assigned. All right, step 6, so we'll assign the new license to the new group. We'll go back to the new customer service group here. Open that up, and we'll click on the licenses area on the left. Click on assignments, and we'll select that Dynamics 365 Customer Service Enterprise license and click Save. All right, now we're just going to initiate the process here by clicking the reprocess button. This will kick off the assignment of the license to that group to make sure that it's initiating right away. And this can take some time, again, if you have a lot of users as members of that group. And we're going to do a quick validation by opening up one of the users and making sure that they are getting that. You can see we have for the customer service a conflicting service plan, which is expected behavior here. So go ahead, feel free to ignore that. And that'll take some time to go through all those users. Once that's completed and the users have that assigned license, we want to remove the old license from the old license group. You can come in here, the licenses area for that group, and click on that customer engagement license, click remove license. And then again, we'll initiate the reprocessing of that request so that it starts kind of going through all the users in that group and removing that license. I'm going to refresh the Azure portal here to get an update on the status. And you can see now it's completed. It's removed the license from all the users in that group. And so we should now just have the new license assigned to those users via that new licensing group for customer service. So I'm going to come into one of the user accounts just to validate that. And you can see here, yes, we only have that customer service license assigned. Okay, so in this process flow, we're guiding you through the transition path for group-based license assignment. And this is for scenarios where you're already using group-based licensing for your old licenses. The first decision point is to review whether there's a one-to-one mapping from the old licenses to the new licenses. For example, if you're planning to transition all current users who are assigned the old Dynamics 365 customer engagement license to the new Dynamics 365 customer service license, this will be a one-to-one mapping in that scenario. You then follow the yes path here by first testing for service plan conflicts with one of the users who has the old customer engagement license assigned. If there are conflicts there, then you'd want to revoke the old license and assign the new license using group management in Azure portal or through PowerShell. If you have a large number of users in the group, again, it can take some time for the license reassignment to process. It will iterate through one user at a time, first removing the old license, and then immediately adding the new license per user as it processes all the users in that group. If the service plan conflict does not exist, then you can follow the no path here, and you can assign the new licenses using the Azure portal or PowerShell directly to that existing group. And removing the old license, again, is optional since you eventually will have that expire and get automatically removed at a later date. If the license transition doesn't have a one-to-one mapping, coming back up here, you would follow this no path. And again, first test to see if you have any service plan conflicts that exist when assigning both the current license and your new license. If there aren't any service plan conflicts, then you'd move to the step on the right where you'd create a new group or set of groups for the licenses that you're transitioning to, and then add the appropriate users to those groups. And then you'd assign the new license to the group for the using Azure Portal or PowerShell commands to do that. You have the option again of removing the old license from the old group or leaving them assigned until the license expires and getting that removed automatically. If service plan conflicts do exist, then you'd follow the path down to the third row here, and you'd create a licensing group for the new licenses. You'd need to create different groups for each of the base licenses that you're transitioning to. And after the groups are created, you'd then assign the necessary users to each of those groups. And then you'd assign the new licenses to those groups. Again, if you're transitioning to base and attached licenses, you'd want to assign both the base and attached licenses to that new group. And you can ignore any service plan conflict errors that may show up during the license assignment in this step. Again, those are expected. And then next, you'd remove the old licenses from the old group. And then finally, you'd monitor the status of the license assignment on the new groups by accessing the licenses area of the group, as we mentioned in the previous scenario. You should see a status letting you know that license changes have been applied to all users once it's completed. And if needed, you can spot check some of the users in the group by going into the user account, the licenses area, and reviewing the assignment path. So there it'll show the inherited group for the license once it gets assigned. And of course, you have the option to use the reprocess button to resync the licenses if you don't see the assignment process kicking off right away. All right, so in this demo, we'll be walking through how to transition your license if you're already using group-based licensing and you have a one-to-one mapping from the old license to the new license. And in this example, a service plan conflict does exist, so we'll show you how to address that. Okay, so same as before, we're going to test against one of the user accounts whether or not a service plan conflict exists. We've already got this inherited customer engagement license assigned previously. That's our old license. So we're going to select the customer service license that we're transitioning to, click Save Changes, and you can see we do have a service plan conflict here that we need to account for. All right, so first we want to remove the old license from the group. So we'll open up that customer support group, and we'll go into the licenses area. Click on the customer engagement plan license. And then we'll click remove license here. Confirm the changes. And then once that's done, we want to assign the new license to that group. And so we'll come into assignments, click on the customer service license, click save. And you can see here the license changes are pending. Depending on number of users, that can take some time to process. So we're going to kick it off, making sure that it is initiated by clicking the reprocess button. I'm going to refresh the Azure portal, and this will give us an updated status. And we can see now that the licensing changes have been applied to the group. So now we're doing a quick validation on one of the users that we are seeing the updates. And now we only have that new customer service license assigned to the user. All right, so in this final demo, we'll be walking through how to transition your license if you're already using group-based licensing and you have a one-to-many mapping from the old license to the new licenses. We've already reviewed how to test for service plan conflicts, so we're not going to go through that step again in this demo, but that would be the first action that you take in this scenario. And similar to the previous demos, we'll be transitioning from the customer engagement license to the new licensing. All right, so we start by creating new licensing groups for our new licenses. So for this first one, we're going to create a group called Dynamics 365 Customer Support. And we'll go ahead and add members to that group. and then click Create to create the group. And for the second one here, we're going to create the Dynamics 365 sales users group and add the sales users that would be associated with this group. All right, now once we have those groups created, we're going to assign the new licenses to those groups. So opening up this customer support users group, clicking on licenses and assignments. And we're going to add the Dynamics 365 customer service enterprise license to this group. Click Save. And then we'll go back and we'll do the same thing for the sales users group that we created. Click licenses on the left, click assignments, and we'll select the Dynamics 365 sales enterprise license and click Save to assign that license to the group. And then we'll just do a quick validation that the users have the new licenses assigned. So we'll click into one of these groups, click on the member list, and open up test user 1 here. We should have received that. Click on licenses. And you can see we have both the customer engagement old license as well as the new customer service license applied through inherited group licensing. And we're going to also do the same validation on the sales group. So we'll open that group up. Look at the member list here and open up one of the user accounts. Click on licenses. And again, same thing. You can see we've got the old customer engagement license is still assigned as well as the new sales enterprise license. If service plan conflicts do exist, you'd want to start by creating new licensing groups and adding users. Again, one group per base license. So the first group we'll create here is the Dynamics 365 customer support users group, and we'll add members to that group. Click Create. And then the second group that we're going to create is a Dynamics 365 field service users group. And we'll select the membership for that group. And then we'll click Create to provision that group. And then once the groups are created, we're going to assign the licensing to those groups. So we'll come into the first one, the customer support users group, licenses area, and we're going to select that Dynamics 365 customer service license. Click Save. So that group now has that license assigned to it. And then we'll come back and we'll do the same thing with the field service users group. Click licenses, and in this case, we're going to select the Dynamics 365 field service license. All right, so once those are assigned to the new groups, we want to remove the old license from the old licensing group. So we're going to open this customer engagement users group, go to the licenses area, and click on that customer engagement license. And then we'll click remove license here. Confirm. And again, this will take some time to process, but we'll kick off and initiate that by clicking the reprocess button here. And we'll let that start iterating through the members of that group so that the license can be removed and the new licenses can be applied. We're going to refresh the Azure portal, and it'll give us that kind of final notification once these licenses have been removed from all the users. So you can see here, license changes have been applied to all users, so that's now completed. And we'll do a quick validation, go into the customer support users, open up one of the user records in here, and look at the license assignments. And you can see we now only have that new customer service license assigned through the customer support user group. And you can see also that the changes have been applied for that customer support group. So all the licenses have been applied to all the users within that group. Same for field service users. We're going to open up one of the user accounts and make sure they're just receiving that field service license. And that is the case. So you can see this user is inheriting that license from the group. And looking at the overall status of the license on the group, you can see all changes have been applied to all users for that license. All right, so now we'll review in more detail what different options you have for reassigning the licenses. Starting with group-based license assignment. Applying group-based licensing is our first approach and what we generally recommend just due to its ease of administration. Some of the things to consider. So first, as we mentioned previously, there's a possibility that you'll see those service plan conflicts when you assign two licenses simultaneously that grant the same service plans. So you want to test that ahead of time to help determine what path to take when you're transitioning your licenses. And then second, there's a potential delay of the license reassignment between the time you revoke the old licenses and assign the new licenses. So we can't guarantee that user accounts won't get disabled during that time. But if you use the transition process approaches outlined in the previous sections, then it should minimize that risk. Also, using group-based licensing gives you the option to delegate group membership assignment to that group. So those delegates can then assign the appropriate members where that license assignment is needed. We provide an example scenario of moving from the customer engagement licenses to the customer service enterprise licenses. And in this scenario, the existing group is being used to apply that customer engagement license, and they need to transition this group to the new customer service enterprise license. So this is a one-to-one mapping for that license transition. The process is fairly straightforward. Again, you'd want to remove the customer engagement plan from the group, the customer engagement license from the group, and then immediately after assign the customer service enterprise license. And this will help reduce any risk that the users will be without a license for any given period of time. If there are base and attached licenses involved, you want to ensure that you have the attached licenses assigned to the same group that the base license is assigned to as well. And one thing to be aware of, depending on the number of users in the group, the background process to revoke and assign the licenses, again, can take some time to execute. So there is potential here that users could temporarily lose access while these changes are propagating, but following the steps, again, that we outlined in the process transition flows really should help mitigate that. So next we'll review in more detail what PowerShell license assignment options you have available. So for assigning direct user licenses using PowerShell, same as the group-based licensing, you have the option to experience the service plan conflicts. So you'd want to test that ahead of time and determine if that's something that needs to be accounted for. For our example, in this one, you're transitioning from the customer engagement license to the customer service license, and you'd execute the command to revoke the customer engagement license and then assign the new customer service license. In terms of risks, depending on the number of users the script would have to cycle through, and considering how the script is written, there could be a window of time where the licenses would be revoked prior to the new licenses being assigned. And this could lead to the user getting disabled during that time window. You can minimize this risk by writing the PowerShell script so that the license removal and the assignment of the new license takes place in the same step for each user versus first removing all the licenses for the users, for all the users, and then adding the new licenses to those users. The other risk here relates to the long-term administrative overhead that should be considered when deciding if direct user assignment is the right path. And as we mentioned earlier, this can be challenging to support and track when compared to the group-based approach. In most cases, we would definitely recommend using the group-based approach to help reduce that administrative overhead. So here we've included a script that you can use for removing your user assigned licenses. We've also included optional commands for direct user reassignment if you're planning to stick with that approach. And this is the same script that we use to remove the user assigned licenses during the demos. So any highlighted areas in the script would need to be updated when you're going through this. This is the second part of the script. It includes the steps to validate the CSV file, remove the licenses from the users, and perform a final validation that the license is no longer assigned to any users. And then we've included two optional commands here. So these will support that direct user assignment of the new license. So for option number one, this allows you to remove the old license and assign the new license in a single command. So if you're not planning to use group-based license assignment for the new license, then this option would be recommended since it reduces the risk that any user accounts will get disabled because of the fact that the removal and the assignment actions occur sequentially in a single step per user as the script loops through all the users in that CSV file. And then for the second option here, this command will assign the new license to the users in the CSV file. This option assumes you've already removed the old license in a previous step. And similarly to the previous commands, you define the SKU variable here and the path to where that CSV file is located. Okay, this next script provides you with the commands to reassign the license for a single user, leveraging, again, the Microsoft Graph module. The example here doesn't offer a bulk migration of all users like the previous script, but can be used more for like one-off scenarios as needed. But similar to the previous script, you'd first connect to the tenant and run the command to get the license SKU for the license that you want to remove, as well as the license that you want to assign. Step 4 here, you're setting the variable for the user that you want to reassign the license for, and you want to update the user ID value here, inserting the username for that specific user. Step 5, you provide, this will provide you with a list of SKUs that are currently assigned to that user, and you'd want to copy the SKU part number for that specific license that you want to remove. And then step 6, this is using that SKU part number that you just copied. You'd insert it here into the highlighted area, and this command will define, that SKU to remove variable that will be used here in the next step. All right, and then step 8, this is where we're removing the current license. Step 9 is adding the new license to the user account, and we've included an optional command here, which again will remove the old license and assign a new license in that single step if you'd prefer. And then step number 10, you can run this to validate that just the new license is now reflecting on that user's account. All right, the final option is manual license assignment. And this is, the biggest challenge with this is how labor intensive it can be. So for those customers who have hundreds to thousands of licenses, this really isn't a feasible option. We'd either recommend using the group assignment or PowerShell script approaches, or potentially a combination of the two, depending on what your needs are. But for the process here, you'd open the user account in either the Microsoft 365 Admin Center or an Azure Active Directory. You then remove the old license, and once that's removed, you'd apply the new license. From a risk standpoint, this is the lowest risk option because you're doing it at the user level and seeing that the change actually take place. But again, really not feasible or recommended for a higher number of users and licenses that need to be transitioned. One of the potential impacts with the license transition is user disablement, and we've provided guidance on how to minimize those situations where users could potentially get disabled during the time a license is removed and then the new license is assigned in the previous slides. But we wanted to highlight some of the things to be aware of if you do run into this scenario. So when a user count is disabled, that user would no longer be able to access Power Platform resources in the environment, like apps and flows, for example. Any processes like workflows, Power Automate flows, integrations with your Dynamics applications, which are owned by that disabled user, would then also fail to function. And then we have a few other items to mention here. So disabled users, they don't actually lose their security role. Those will be retained. They're not removed from teams or queues if they get disabled. So once they're re-enabled, all of that will be re-enabled as well, be restored. And any records owned by a disabled user are not deactivated. So there shouldn't be any impact in that respect. Also, a consideration here for higher impact accounts like service accounts. We do recommend that you process the reassignment of those accounts separately, so there's more control and you're able to closely monitor the status of the reassignment. And finally, we put together some additional resources to help support you in these transitions. And these are links that we've taken from other places in this guide and have also included related docs that would be useful to support different subtopics for license transition. All right, so that brings us to the end of the presentation. Thank you all for attending. Hopefully this was helpful, and I'll hand it back to Laura to close us out.
Great. Thank you, Reed. Appreciate that. I have posted a link to a short survey in the Q&A panel. We would like your feedback on today's session and hear what you'd like to see in future events, and we thank you for your participation in that. As a reminder, the recording of today's session will be available on the TechTalk's Community Dynamics page within 5 business days. I'd like to extend a big thank you to our presenters, Reed and Kimberly, and thank you, audience, for joining us today. Please stay safe and have a great rest of your day or evening. Goodbye.